the first biannual Hays County Meet the Candidate Night. Can everyone hear me? So, I want to talk to you all a little bit about where Hays County has come and where we are today and where we plan on going before we get to hear from all of our candidates. So, but first, conventions. When I was first planning the precinct convention, I was warned by multiple people that it was going to be nothing but drama. So I sat there, I studied my little card that I was given word for word. I was told people were going to show up and try to take power. It was going to be a horrible drama fest. And we get there, we're signing everybody up, and the worst thing that happened was that 2 kids under 18 tried to sneak in to get in and to have a say. I was relieved. It was great. We were all working together. Everyone was fine. So it had to have been county convention. So I did the same thing for county convention. Went through, studied everything I could to make sure I did it word for word appropriately. Heard people were going to show up. It was going to be a big fight. I got a call from a friend that morning who started at Travis County a few hours before us. And I was told it was pretty much a shitfest. So I get up to our county and I'm like, oh no, I know we're voting for different people. It's all going to be chaos. And we get in there and we're done before Travis County finishes their event. Nobody has fought with anybody and everybody's fine. So state convention comes and that has to be it. I remember state convention and nationals from last year when the man running naked across the stage, it was gonna break down then. And then I remember seeing Mike on the Tippett's team and I was like, oh no, we're gonna fight. And I don't wanna fight, I like Mike. And he came up and gave me a big old hug and everything was fine. And then we sat through the convention and we sat in the back, and rather than fighting like we saw a couple of the other counties doing, we talked about where we hoped Hays County would go. And it seemed that the one unified goal at the end of state wasn't that our candidate made it, but what it was done, we all had to support that candidate. And that's what we've started doing within Hays. And we created goals in order to help the Libertarian Party succeed. One of those goals was planning this tonight. So at our county convention, we started with 8 people. And now look at us tonight. I know not all of y'all are Hays, but still, we've grown. We've got the message out. Yeah. So we're expecting only about 3 candidates. That was our goal. And I believe we have 5 here tonight so far. Raise your hand if you're a candidate so everybody knows where you are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candidates. We weren't expecting to get any speakers, and here we have Dr. Mary Ruert. Where was she? There she is. Did I say it right? And Scott Horton. So media, we wanted 1 person here, and we have Seguin, wherever he is. The Seguin, right here. The Seguin Gazette will be doing something on us. So we were worried because we were worried about the 90% chance of rain that was supposed to happen this weekend, so we were hoping to have 50 people. I don't know how many people are here, but we've done pretty good considering the weather. So I'd say we're doing really good at achieving our goals. And I want to take a minute to thank some people. Obviously, the audience for coming out and braving the Texas weather of whatever it could be. The candidates and speakers for coming out from Houston and all the other places to make sure that this event could be taking off. But I also think we should give a special recognition to Mike Hansen and Vincent Cias, because without them, this event would not have been a thing. They funded the entire thing and donated it to Hays County. As far as where we're going, keep your eye out on the Hays County Facebook page, because we have a few fundraisers we're planning. A decent sized party, so hopefully y'all can all make it. And so yeah, and a few other events. So thank y'all for coming out.
Thank you, Chelsea. All right, good evening, everyone. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Vincent Cias. I'm the Director of Marketing and Public Outreach for Hays County. But before I get started, I'd like to thank everyone, all the candidates, our guest speakers, and all of you that came out here, because without y'all, this wouldn't have happened. So another round of applause for you guys. Before I knew what the LP was, and before I attended local meetings in surrounding counties, and before I participated as a delegate in our last state convention. I was introduced to a podcast by my brother-in-law and officer at large in the Libertarian Party of Comal County, Ivan Foster, wherever you're at. He's getting food downstairs. There you go. Better be. He's married to my sister. So. At the time, I couldn't articulate the political views that I felt so strongly about. Mainly, the first principle to direct me to the LP was non-interventionism, stopping perpetual wars, and the military-industrial complex. All I knew was that none of these wars made sense to me. And then I came to the realization that they're not supposed to. But while listening to our next speaker, I began to understand, to the best of my knowledge, that the powers at play are much bigger than I was, and the stakes are much higher. Finally, I found a way to listen to the journalists, the politicians, the pundits, the lawyers, and experts on foreign policy and wartime law. Scott Horton has recorded more than 4,700 interviews since 2003. He has served on foreign policy advisor to LP candidates in 2004. During primary season 2007, Horton defended then presidential candidate Ron Paul for his criticisms on foreign intervention. In the same year, he also won Austin Chronicle's Best of Austin award for his insight on the Iraq War. If you haven't listened to his podcast, The Scott Horton Show, please do. His new book, Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, is out now, and it's available through him right here on your left, so please purchase the book on your way out. Everyone give a round of applause for Scott Horton, everyone. Thank you.
Hi. You hear me all right? All right. Thanks very much, everybody, for having me here. I guess I should have come up with a joke to start with. I have a joke, but it's not very good. Well, I didn't shave today because I figure you give a speech on a Saturday, you don't get a clean shave. But I did trim my nose hairs. So I hope you guys can tell from back there that kind of groomed. All right, not very good. All right, so you're gonna probably not like some of what I have to say, but I think you'll like most of it. So I guess we'll start with that. Who here is a Ron Paul fan? This is easy. I'm trying to get y'all on my side here. Okay, so how many people found libertarianism because of Ron Paul? A few. Okay, and now of you guys, how many of you was it the Giuliani moment in 2007 and the fight about foreign policy in the Republican debate? Yeah, or half? All right, well, it's a small crowd. But anyway, you all know the story. In fact, there's a great documentary about this called How Ron Paul Watered the Withered Tree of Liberty. And it sounds like, I don't know, am I really going to watch a documentary about the Ron Paul campaign of '08? How exciting could that be? But it's actually so good. And what it's all about is how it was that moment when Ron Paul fought Rudy Giuliani in the Republican debate over the cause of anti-American terrorism that woke up so many people who they could just tell, obviously, the sincerity of Ron Paul, that he would serve them up such a bitter pill, and they decided they would rather take it than spit it out. So, and it really changed the world. Obviously, he didn't win. He could be on Ron's second term right now. But he didn't win, but he moved the ball forward for libertarianism and for the argument for non-interventionism in foreign affairs in America by a million miles. He really did so much to spread libertarianism really throughout the world. He made it famous in a way it really never had been before in that 2008 campaign. And it was the war that did it. And I think this goes to the important point about this myth. It's kind of a constant debate, right, inside the Libertarian Party about whether we should just run to teach people about libertarianism and be really radical, or whether we should try really hard to campaign to win. And I think this is such a false dichotomy and such a kind of a waste of time and energy in this debate when, as Ron Paul showed, and again, I admit he didn't win, but you gotta admit no one knew who he was before then at all. And he was just a member of the House of Representatives after all. But anyway, it was Ron Paul's radicalism that really woke everybody up. And Ron Paul was a radical all along, was reelected over and over and over again. And because people knew, first of all, that he always told the truth, and that whatever it was, if he was against it, he was completely against it, and would brook no tolerance for opposition. And so when he ran for president, he ran on the war, and he ran on the central bank, the Federal Reserve, and the boom-bust cycle that disrupts our economy so terribly every decade or so. And then he said, and we're going to entirely abolish the empire and bring all of the troops home from everywhere, and we're going to abolish the central bank and replace it with nothing. He took the furthest, most radical position. And now Ron Paul actually is a little bit conservative and deviationist from libertarianism on some issues, as you all probably know. But those aren't the things that won everybody over. Those weren't the things that made millions of people rally to his cause. It was the war. It was a big fight about the war and about inflation and central banking that rallied everyone to his cause. And so, really think about the math, right? If you're running in a race as a libertarian, in a race against a Republican and a Democrat, and most people think that a libertarian is just kind of some sort of warmed over Republican but who smokes pot or something like that, then they're just going to vote for the Republican who has at least a 50-50 shot at it, rather than the libertarian who, is a pale imitation and symbolizes no meaningful difference, right? And here's the thing of it too. And as libertarians, we understand this really better than, I'm sorry, I'm swaying around, cameraman. As libertarians, we really understand this better than liberals and conservatives of just what a crisis the United States of America is in, and how far we are from a system that is truly based around liberty for all. And it is a crisis, and the warfare state obviously is at the heart of it. And so it's at the heart of the permanent national emergency and the centralization of all power in DC, where all decisions get made further and further away from us and from our influence as citizens. And I'm not talking about you guys, obviously not, but the National Libertarian Party has been maybe worse than worthless on the topic of foreign policy in the 21st century. And it's a real shame too, because this is really our comparative advantage. You know, the right-wingers, almost all are bad on war. There's a paleo-conservative faction, and there's kind of an overall disgruntlement with the length of the war at this point. But conservatives in America cannot be relied on as an anti-war movement, let's be frank. And then we see how it is with the liberals, right? They love Cindy Sheehan, and they want out of Iraq just until Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats take over the House in 2006, and they haven't said a word about it since. We blame it on Barack Obama like it was Obama who shut him up. They haven't said a word about it since 2006, before he even came to town. They're unreliable at best. And look at their entire conflict with Trump is that he's selling us out to some foreign power. He's not a hawk enough. If only the CIA will protect us from him, and this kind of thing. So they're lost. So if the warfare state is really as bad as we think it is, and it is, then the American people need us, need the libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party to be their leaders on this issue. And also, it's a huge advantage for us in the political market, right? There's this huge gap between the truth and the narrative about what's going on with these wars. And there's this huge gap between the truth and what's right. And so libertarians ought to be knocking them out of the park on this all day long. And another thing that's an advantage of ours is we're not lefties and we're not liberals, and so we don't talk like them. We don't remind people of 1960s era tie-dyed hippies and Jane Fonda treason and, give peace a chance. But we make serious arguments about imperialism and how destructive it is to our life here in America as well as to the people overseas in a way that really can change minds and win people over. Yeah, after all, Donald Trump, the Republican president of the United States, the Republican president of the United States was quoted again last week saying that George Bush's decision to invade the greater Middle East was the worst decision an American president had ever made. Now, he's not taking into account Woodrow Wilson and World War I, but still. He's not attacking Bill Clinton, he's attacking the Republicans for what they've done. And he knows that his base agrees with that, right? So in other words, guys, our flank is covered, our right flank is covered. I was talking with Josh over here earlier, and he was talking about how his friend, his anti-war friend, is a combat veteran, a wounded combat veteran, who tries to teach his friends about the cycle of hate, how the war doesn't work, it just makes matters worse. Okay, so we got combat veterans, wounded combat veterans, we got the Republican President of the United States covering our right flank. We, the Libertarians, can do real damage on this issue against the empire, against the wars, to really end them, and to really make a name for ourselves too. That we're the ones who are best on the most important things, the very worst things that our government is doing. All right, so now I'm going to probably make some of you mad at me. I have an idea. Look, I'm not even really a party member, and when it comes to the rubber meets the road stuff, I'd rather go skate. There's a joke for you. Did you like it? I really am not good at organizing and all that. I'm a radio guy and I read a lot. That's kind of, so I'm not here to criticize in any way. I'm just trying to I have an idea I want to float for you guys. Now, what if instead of always doing this, as the Libertarian Party, of running a candidate for every single thing in the state, and getting basically nowhere, the same place we were before. What if we took all of the separate efforts that are spent on all these House races, these state House and state Senate races, land commissioner and railroad commissioner and attorney general and lieutenant, governor and all these things, and what if instead we focused the entire Texas Libertarian Party's resources every 2 years running our very best guy, one campaign of our very best guy for the U.S. House of Representatives. And we took, because look, all of the most important issues, the war, the central bank, the drug war, I mean, obviously there's drug wars to be fought on the state level, but mostly that's all led by the feds, right? All of our most important emergencies in our society are the federal government's fault. And it's the federal government's theater where these battles have to be fought. So what if we took all these resources, we had somebody who really knew, and I'm not the guy, but somebody who really could take a good measure of where is there a district that's really an open race? Maybe a Republican is retiring or is run out by scandal or something, and there's an open race. And where is it that we have a guy who's a really solid Ron Paul Libertarian, who really knows his stuff, knows what he's talking about, really wants to do something about it, and really, like Ron Paul, has sincere, long-standing, good standing in the community that really could support him. And just imagine if we just had just one capital L Libertarian in the U.S. House of Representatives to play that role that Ron Paul used to always play, to always vote no, to always stand up against them, to always give a great speech about liberty in the place of what these horrible people are trying to do. And maybe, just as a thought experiment, try, how about 2020, right? Not this time, sorry. Next time around, maybe just try to change things up a little bit and see if we could do something that could really make a mark and really get a hit. If you know what I mean. Because, look, I think I might have already said this. We want to be free now in our lifetimes, right? We like recruiting new libertarians to our movement. We like recruiting new libertarians to the party. We like meeting together and drinking and having a good time and all these things. But if we really want to live free in our lifetimes, in real life, and not just talk about it and hope about it and try to push a little bit of marginal change somewhere, then we have to be able not just to focus on changing people to libertarianism, but in being the very best libertarians that we can be, so that libertarians as a whole can lead the rest of America to prioritizing our priorities, to stopping what we say are the very worst crimes of our government, so that we can have liberty in our lifetimes. All right, thank you. Oh, and the book is for sale over there. I wrote a book about Afghanistan. Ron Paul liked it, if anyone's interested. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Scott. It's a great speech. Thank you. Everyone, Scott Horton, give him a round of applause. Also, another thanks for all of you guys for coming out. This is a great turnout. It's exactly what we expected. Also, thank the bartender. I want to thank AquaBrew for having us here. It's a great, beautiful venue. Make sure to tip your bartenders, all right? Bar's still open in case I want to drink some more. All right, this will be our first candidate, Matt Pena, okay? He's running for Texas Land Commissioner. I first heard of Matt at our last state convention. His professionalism and passion for liberty drew my attention. I'm not sure if he remembers me asking him 20 questions at the convention about his success as a libertarian in his local community of San Antonio. I couldn't help but find out more about his route to politics. He told me something I'll never forget, that we need more libertarians to run for offices, large and small, to direct the pathway and build infrastructure for local candidates. And that's true. For us to have a pathway for future libertarians to be kind of grandfathered in to the positions of power and to really make change, like Scott Horton was saying. So what this told me was that the road to office could be a lonely road, but also rewarding. To Matt and all the other candidates running tonight, thank you for building the infrastructure and creating the pathway for future candidates alike. Thank you. I was impressed by Matt's resume as a graduate of Churchill High School and his MA in political science, all while working full-time. Matt Pena is a long-term resident of District 9 and is eager to share his plans for the future of the next Texas Land Commissioner. He loves his home city of San Antonio and embraces all of the culture, especially the Alamo. Matt has lived in Texas his whole life, and now let's help him make a difference. Matt Pena, everyone.
Hi guys, thank you for coming out. I think every time I see libertarians gather, it's just, it's a wonderful fight because it brings the finest people every single time. Now for myself, being a libertarian, I got real lucky. My sister at the age of 17, my older sister was actually already working on her poli-sci degree. And she just looks at me and she goes, "You know what, Matt, after hearing you talk, I think you're a classic liberal." I go, "Huh? What does that mean?" And so she just hands me this kind of paperwork and, hands me all these type of books, mail lock and all this stuff. And, I finally realized that what it was. But libertarianism for me has been such a changing momentum in my life and a very positive one. I have unfortunately dealt with more crime and violence than I could care to admit to. And this is what I've had to deal with in my city. For me, I always got to think about libertarianism as a way of solving the problems that I had come across. For myself, when I kind of explain this, so I'm actually going to be on Dateline in the beginning of October. It's great, right? Good exposure. Well, for me, the reason why is because one of my good friends in San Antonio, and this was actually when I was going to school, she took a shift for me and she got killed at work. And it was very, it's very tragic because she did nothing wrong. She didn't ask for this. And, some guy, this is why I think about it. Some guy used his freedom, used his own choice to end her life. That's a real fact. It's true. This happens not just to me, but to other people across the state and other cities, especially in urban environments. And so what I did instead was I went through school and I learned a little bit more about trying to understand why people would do these things. And that's what I realized. It's desperation. It's because they don't have an opportunity. They don't have the freedom to choose for themselves. They have to deal with the chains that they're given by the society that they enter. And it happens consistently again and again and again. And for myself, you know, it just got worse. I think the whole time I was going through my college degree, I got robbed at gunpoint. My store that I had got burglarized twice by people running into a truck. I got robbed at gunpoint. It was just consistently again and again. And I would go to my city councilors, these members, and I was like, what are you doing? You know, San Antonio, when you compare it to the police officers on what they would spend the income on, they were choosing it to spend it on pet projects. In fact, I've come to kind of despise the developers in my areas because instead of actually helping people, they're choosing to purposely make it a profit at the expense of others, trying to harm people. And there's a difference. I'm for making profit because it does help. But when you're choosing, when you know it's going to harm somebody, when you know it's going to move somebody else out of their homes where they don't have an opportunity at all, there's nothing you can do. And this happens consistently, I think, in every city that I've ever been to. Now, some years later, of course, you know, getting involved in politics, it's been an interesting kind of ride. For myself, being a libertarian, it is definitely hard to get the voice out there to understand. You know, I know for myself, the media is choosing to try to ignore me. In fact, many of the polling that comes out, they go, who are you going to vote for? Miguel Suazo, the Democrat, George Bush, the Republican, or other? I'm an other. So in order to get on that poll, those people who are voting have to specifically say my name. They have to know me by name, which is great. You know, I've seen people from all across the state of Texas reach out to me. They're wondering what's going on because they know that my position is affecting them where they live. And, you know, I think for myself, I get to distinguish myself from the other two opponents. I'm the only one who's not an oil lawyer. Not that I'm against oil or anything along those lines, but I'm against it when you're going to use it an expense. You're not creating your, I heard the term earlier, we're creating a Republican free market, whatever that may mean. And, you know, for myself, there's been many issues. You know, the biggest one in my race right now currently is the Alamo. Okay. The Alamo, it's a $400 million project that they are not giving any real reason why they're doing it. They haven't. We've asked them time and time again, what's the purpose of this? And kind of their whole thing is, well, when people come here and they visit, they're kind of underwhelmed. Like, yes, but that doesn't justify spending $400 million on something that nobody in the city is really wanting, and people across the state of Texas don't want. So we can look at it from kind of the Republican point of view. So I tell them, it's like, okay, look, we have traditions here in the state of Texas. One of the biggest ones is the Battle Flowers Parade. 120 years, those women have gone in front of the Alamo, laid down wreaths, and now all of a sudden, you're going to have them go to the back door. You're going to prevent them from this route they've helped keep up for 120 years. Now see, the Alamo itself has been monitored by a public entity called the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. Now, the Alamo would not exist except if it were for these ladies. Just wanted it all. And I think for libertarians, we have to remember that this is the type of organization we argue for. Consistently, we argue for when somebody takes the personal responsibility to go out, use their freedom to prevent the destruction of what they considered a momentous occasion in our history. Now, a lot of times has been arguing me, and that's just from the Daughters' point of view, okay? I've had many indigenous tribes reach out to me personally. They're going to be, in this new plan, they're going to be destroying the indigenous burial grounds that are there all around the Alamo as well. And they don't know who to go to because the Democrat hasn't even showed up at all. These people are asking consistently, like, hey, in fact, we've actually filed several different lawsuits to try to prevent the city from doing this because back in the 90s, they said that this was never going to happen. Now, for myself, I think when you look at the whole plan, okay, and I do focus on the Alamo a lot because this is such an easy sell to many Texans, because when you look at the Alamo, it's a beacon of hope for people across the world, and they need that. They need those beacons. They need those reminders. But it's also about who's being included, too. the locals, the people like myself, so I'm related to Jose Antonio Menchaca, the third mayor of San Antonio, actually the first Hispanic mayor of San Antonio since the state of Texas, okay? And for myself, the indigenous people, their story has been purposely left out time and time again. And in fact, the locals want it added. They want that information added. I've had many Republicans saying, yeah, because these Tejanos fought just as much as any Texan or Texian. Those, including those stories, when you make it fair for everyone, you start seeing the original story that has, you start understanding that it was a complex situation that occurred. It's not, you know, we these days, people are so polarized, we look at and we get any idea, then all of a sudden, boom, you know, we're not even talking to each other anymore. I'm sure you've had several relatives being libertarian, they're like, I don't understand how you can have those viewpoints. I don't get it at all. It happens to me consistently. But I have to remind them, like, hey, look, I'm here to listen. I want to learn a little bit about you, but sit down and talk with me. Actually talk with me. So, you know, beyond the Alamo, of course, the biggest, the original point of the creation of Texas Land Commission was actually monitoring the public school fund. And a couple days ago, of course, I find out that Bush is withholding that public school fund, $140 million from the schools around the state. Now, why would a libertarian care about this? Isn't this saving money? No, it's not at all. In fact, what happened was that our property taxes have increased so much that the schools are going to receive the same funding. And instead of actually saying, hey, you know what, maybe we should lower the taxes, especially for the common and the poorest man, what are we going to do? We're going to just keep on to that money. And he hasn't said anything at all about what he's going to do with it. So, and this is a consistent thing. There's no transparency in the current organization that's there. We want to have transparency. I don't know anybody, Democrat, Republican, when I meet my rank and file, you know, I always say, I never have a problem with my rank and file guys. It's the leadership I have a problem with, because they're not leading. They are purposely not leading. They are dividing the American people right now. And it's unacceptable. And I think that's why people are starting to come to the Libertarian Party, because they realize that we're here for everybody. We want your voice, because we have that strength that the Libertarian is when we bring in all different values from all different viewpoints, and we can say to ourselves, well, guess what? We're going to compromise, we're going to understand these issues, and that's, with data, that is where we are going to decide what is right for people. And so for myself, it's that data that when you realize what people need and you meet them, this is why I encourage libertarians, get out in your community as much as you can. I got to do something that was very phenomenal this last year. I became the first libertarian in San Antonio that was appointed to one of our city boards. So I'm very excited about that, because now they're, and the best part is I got to represent the consumer and the board. That's all I represent are consumers. And for myself, it's easy, because for them, they always split it up. Well, here's the Democrat view, here's the Republican view. But now, going as libertarian, I get to go, no, this is what's best. So I got to keep Uber and Lyft inside the city of San Antonio, because I was the one arguing for those guys. You know, and one of the big things too is San Antonio's a drinking town. I'm not going to lie about that. We like to have a good drink. And what I've loved about Lyft, what I've loved about Uber, is the fact that drunk driving has gone down. Those things, when they're available for people to choose, when people have an option, the freedom to go where they need to, as they need to, they make the best choices for themselves. They do. I don't know anybody who's going, well, you know what, I'm just going to go make a mistake tonight. You know, it's just absurd. And to think that people don't have the ability to make these choices themselves. And that's the equality that we strive for as libertarians. We strive consistently to bring that fairness, to understand that it's not you representative, who makes the best decisions for me. It's me. And, you know, when I think about people, people always wonder about services and things along those lines. You know, they accuse libertarians of not caring. That's just simply not true at all. Most of the libertarians I know will give you the shirt off their back in an instant. And it's happened to me that some of the best donors I've had and some of the best people that have come out consistently to help me with what I'm trying to do and help my city and to help my state have always been libertarians. When I meet most of the leadership and a lot of Republicans are reaching out to me because they just hate Bush, to be frank, and they'll go to me, they go, well, what have you done? You're not campaigning. I go, well, yeah, I've been all over the state. I've tried to reach as many non-libertarians as possible. If you want to give me some money, I'd be glad to go to your location. And they just look at me and no. And I'm like, well, you say you want something different than what you have currently. It's not gonna change unless you put some personal responsibility to it. And so that's what I really challenge to you guys out here tonight, is to take personal responsibility for your local communities. When they see you out there, I know libertarians have a tendency to think really big. We want to try to, get somebody elected as president. We're always thinking about the biggest offices possible. But generally, the best way to change someone's mind is at the smallest office. I really mean that. When you can go and I appreciate, especially came there for Mark, and I appreciate what he's done before being a city councilor. That is a challenge. It is, and when those offices mean so much to people, because at the end of the day, those little local offices have the most effect on people's lives. Politics is local. It's always local. It's knocking on your neighbor's door. Hey, do you mind if you invite some friends over and maybe talk a little bit about libertarianism? Do you mind? Most people are like, we might be a little opposed to it at first, but say, okay, I'll buy a pack of beer, we're fine. But I think we need to remember that. You need to go out to your local community, understand the problems that are affecting your area, because the better you get at that, the more you're going to be able to help them at the larger level. So, all right, guys. Well, I appreciate your support. If you want to come talk to me, feel free. But thanks again. Share my page if you can.
Thank you, Matt Pena. I'm going to introduce our vice chair, Michael Hansen. He's done a lot for our community and a lot for our LPAs. So, everyone, Mike Hansen.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to introduce a good friend of mine. All of you may know her, or many of you may know her, Mary Ruar. She's going to introduce Mark. Mark. Excuse me.
Okay, good. I'm going to introduce Mark, but I wanted to really acknowledge all the candidates here tonight by telling a very short story of something that happened to me when I ran as a candidate, because I want you to recognize how much good you're really doing, and sometimes when we run as candidates we don't see it. So my first race was in 1983 for City Commission, and it was supposed to be a nonpartisan race, but the Libertarian Party decided we would run a slate of candidates, because that's how it was done, a slate. There were 5 slates running, and we ended up coming in second behind the establishment, in other words, the people who were already elected. But what happened during that race was that the media thought they could really destroy our campaign by telling everyone we were libertarians, and nobody knew what that meant, because we were the first candidates that had ever run in that area. So we spent all of our time explaining what a libertarian was, and we were pretty well trained, so we were pretty principled in our answers. And of course, like I said, we didn't win, but we didn't lose either. And the reason I know that is because shortly thereafter, the City Commission, which had just been re-elected, decided they were going to have this big boondoggle in Kalamazoo where they would reroute all the trains, and really it was going to be the biggest bond issue that the city had ever seen. I went to a meeting along with some other libertarians who were against this project because, of course, it involved eminent domain as well as taxes. And while we were standing there in our little libertarian group, one of the people who was going to be affected by the eminent domain grab came up to me, and before he said a word, he put $200 in cash in my hand. That was a huge amount of money back then, before inflation, you know. And he said, Dr. Ruart, I know your employer, Upjohn, is going to benefit by this eminent domain. But, Dr. Ruart, you are a libertarian, so I know you're on my side. And what's going to happen is you're going to try to take the bicycle shop that my brother and I have built up over the years by eminent domain for this rail consolidation. So please, take this money and fight for us. And I was pretty shocked because he gave me the money before he even got my commitment. But we did fight. And we joined with others who were also against rail consolidation, and we killed it. And we rolled back big government without electing anyone. And I want to share that story with you because when we go out and we talk about our principles, people like it. They want to hear about somebody who has integrity. They want to hear about somebody who doesn't want to steal their hard-earned money through taxes. They want to hear that somebody's going to stand up for them if the government comes knocking and wants to take their land by eminent domain. You know, we could be, we could actually be the Ghostbusters of the that you call when big government comes knocking at your door if we tell people what we really stand for. And I think that's what all the candidates here intend to do. So I want to right up front tell you, it doesn't matter in some sense, of course we all want to win the race, but you don't ever lose. Because when you tell people what libertarians stand for, you light a fire. And you let them know who their real protectors are. And I can tell you in the long run, that's really going to pay off. So I just wanted to share that story because I think everyone who runs as a libertarian should understand how important it is when you get out there and you talk to people and when you share our principles. So don't think that your vote total is the only thing that matters, because we can roll back big government without electing anyone, and we can do it when we elect people too, so we can have it both ways. So now, having shared that little anecdote, I am going to introduce you to our gubernatorial candidate, Mark Tippett. And I could say a lot about Mark, but I'm going to share with you the things that really excite me about his candidacy. First of all, I really like that he actually served on the city council in Lago Vista, because I think it's great when our candidates can say, yeah, I've served before. And I really like it that he ran another race in 2010 for Travis County Judge, because this isn't his first rodeo in terms of actually running for office. And of course, as you know, our top of the ticket and our statewide candidates really have our ballot access in their hands, because we need to get a certain vote total for our gubernatorial candidate or our statewide candidates in order to retain ballot access. Now, I don't know how many of you were involved in the last ballot access drive. I know I was involved in several in Michigan, but it's something we don't want to have to do. So we really want to work hard for our candidates so they get those vote totals. And I think Mark's got a very good chance of doing it. One of the things I really like about him is he really straddles both the US and Mexico. He's bilingual. He's a consultant for businesses who want to have property or business in Latin America or Mexico. And you know, we need that right now because we have a president who's trying to make an enemy out of our southern neighbor and saying that we have to build this wall. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Texas, most of the border is actually owned by private individuals. In some of the other states where the wall is proposed, a lot of it is government land. What this means is that for a wall to come and be put in Texas, there's going to have to be an eminent domain land grab. And this is not something, obviously, that we want as libertarians, and it's not something the owners of those properties want either. And of course, we all know as libertarians that the sheriff, the county sheriffs, really have the power to oust the feds when they're doing something obnoxious like that. But you know, if we don't have a governor in place who's going to support the sheriffs, that's going to be a really difficult decision for some of them. But if we had Mark Tippett for governor, he would support Texas sovereignty. He would support the sheriffs that pushed back when the feds came knocking. And, you know, that would make a big, big difference. And one more thing that, I don't know, I just feel strongly about, maybe because I was in the pharmaceutical industry for so long, but I really like the fact that Mark is really getting kudos from a lot of the people who really need medical marijuana. And I was really glad when I talked to him yesterday and he told me the story of people who come up to him and say how glad they are that he's supporting that. And he shared with me that one of the biggest groups that do that are our vets. You know, we have these people volunteering to go lay down their lives for us. And even though I don't believe in the wars, and I know most of you here don't either, I don't want to support the war, but I do want to support the troops, especially when they're making these sacrifices, thinking it's on our behalf, and they come home and they're traumatized emotionally, physically, in all kinds of ways by what they've seen over there. And then we say, oh, this drug will help your problems here, your depression, and your post-traumatic stress disorder, but we're not going to give it to you. We're not going to allow you to have it. I mean, I think that's just so tragic. So I think it's great that Mark is standing up for that, and I really think it's great that the people who need it, medical marijuana, are recognizing how important that issue is. So I'm going to stop talking about Mark and let him tell you about himself. Mark Tippett, our candidate for governor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ruard. When I first was considering running for the nomination, for the party's nomination as governor, I don't know whether she knows this or not, but the very first phone call I made was to Dr. Mary Ruard. I was familiar with her writings, I was familiar with her story, her trajectory, and so I've had a lot of good advice from a lot of good people along the way. One of the questions that I was asked over and over and over again is, how long have you been a libertarian? Because a lot of people, a lot of the younger people, that they really did not know who is Mark Tippett. So they would ask me, how long have you been a libertarian? And I would scratch my head and I said, I've been a libertarian since before the Libertarian Party even existed. That being libertarian is a way of life. It's the way I was raised. And they would ask me, so did you read all the books? Did you read this book? Did you read that book? And I'll confess to you something here. I haven't read any of them, other than some of Dr. Ruard's stuff. But to be honest with you, Ayn Rand, all the greats, I have not read them. I am a libertarian from birth. My father served in World War II, and he served actually under Sleuth McCain and John McCain's father. And I know a lot of people aren't very fans of that, but and I would ask my father how he did what he did. And he would say, we did what we had to do to defend our freedom, to defend our families, to defend our country, but above all, to defend our liberties. And he would insist that every single one of his children, that we had to fight for our liberties from the moment we got up, with every breath, with every deal we made, with every dollar we spent. we had to fight for our liberties. And I was quite curious, and I'd ask him, I said, why are you so insistent on this? And keep in mind that this was before the Libertarian Party even existed. And he said, it's very simple. He says, if you do not fight with every breath for your liberties, it's like your breath that you breathe, that you exist. When you stop breathing, you will die. When you stop fighting for your liberties, they will be taken from you. So you fight with your last breath. And I'd like to believe that my father fought with his last breath. He left us 2 years ago, and he did fight with his last breath, fighting for liberty. In growing up, I learned libertarian principles. We never spent a dollar we didn't make. We never borrowed money. We paid all of our debts. We worked hard, and that translates into the libertarian philosophy of fiscal responsibility. We never cheated. We never hit anybody. We never were aggressive, but we did not allow people to be aggressive towards us. That translated simply into the non-aggression principle. We didn't care what you did, so long as it didn't affect me, so long as it didn't hurt anybody else. We didn't care what your religion was, what your race, color, creed, sexual orientation was. That translates into social tolerance of the libertarian belief. That's just basic, plain, simple principles of how I was raised. So that's why I was able to say that I was a libertarian before libertarianism even existed. I had my father was a very spiritual man. The most prized possessions he has, fortunately, I inherited that same desire, was his family, his children, and his grandchildren. He had many, more than I care to tell you, but I have 6 children and 7 grandchildren. And I would have these philosophical discussions with him, and he was quite a religious man. And the one book that always baffled me, that I could have swore Stephen King wrote, was the book of Revelation. If anybody's ever picked that up, you was hallucinating or something, and my father would I'd ask him to explain. He says, well, who do you think I am? He says, you can get as much out of it as I do. And I said, so what do you think of all these beasts that it talks about? 7 horns, 20 tails, all this spitting fire stuff. He says, I used to believe that it was describing the political system. And he says, but I have come to the belief that if John, if he would have been writing about our current political system, he would have described an overinflated elephant that was as stubborn as a jackass. That would more appropriately describe our political system today. And I was listening to what Mr. Horton was saying, and to a certain extent, I agree that it would probably behoove us to get behind a federal candidate and get one elected. But I just have one small problem with that. And the federal government, if we get one libertarian elected to the federal government is still going to continue to usurp all of our sovereignty, all of our rights, all of our constitutional rights that was given to us, to this, that was reserved to the state or to the people. The only way to get those back is if we have a strong governor, and I mean no disrespect by this, that will actually stand up to the federal government and take our sovereignty back. And he can do that by starting with the constitutional sheriffs, backing the constitutional sheriffs and telling the federal government, you cannot have it. The federal government, I do agree with my father, is a beast. It's a huge beast that it doesn't matter who is serving it. It is a beast that it must feed on its food, and its food is power. Its food is usurping our power. And if we do not stand up for the sovereignty of Texas and take back what has been usurped by the federal government and say, look, is what Texas signed up for is this. You've crossed that line, we want it back. I was asked to, I was actually given the privilege of recording a 2-minute spot that will be aired on October 13th, the last day of registration. It will be aired, I'm assuming, throughout Texas, and it's a 2-minute spot. And if you'll bear with me 2 minutes, I'd like to share it with you. And in all fairness, a lot of the ideas and bullet points were jotted down by my wife. I kind of put it in a little bit order, but she pretty much jotted them down because she said, I better not wing it, I better have something written down, so especially when you're being timed by 2 minutes. And I'll read the whole thing real quick. And it says, hello, my name is Mark Tippett. I'm the Libertarian candidate for governor, and I'm here to tell you that this November, it is time. It is time to allow Texans the right to seek alternative medical relief. It is time to stop filling our prisons for the simple use of a plant. It is time to end the costly war on drugs. It is time to stand up to the federal government and defend Texas sovereignty. It is time to say no to Trump's wall. It is time to stop government cronyism of picking winners and losers. It is time to eliminate the property tax that enslaves us to perpetually paying rent. It is time that you keep your hard-earned money. My statements are bold, but it is time for a bold governor. I am Mark Tippett. I'm on your ballot. I'm on your side. Hola, mi nombre es Mark Tippett. Soy el candidato libertario para gobernador y estoy aquí para decirles que ya es hora. Es hora de permitir a los tejanos el derecho de buscar ayuda médica alterna. Es hora de dejar de llenar nuestras prisiones por el simple uso de una planta. Es hora de terminar la guerra costosa contra las drogas. Es hora de enfrentar al gobierno federal y defender la soberanía de Texas. Es hora de decir no al muro de Trump. Es hora de terminar con el subsidio empresarial y el amiguismo. Es hora de eliminar el impuesto a la propiedad que nos esclaviza a pagar renta perpetuamente. Es hora que tú mantengas el dinero que con muchos esfuerzos ganaste. Mis declaraciones son audaces, pero es hora de tener un gobernador audaz. Soy Mark Tippett, estoy en tu boleta y estoy de tu lado. Thank you all very much. Thank you all.
It's me again. So this next speaker I met at one of the Libertarian conventions back when I was still working for the Glasses. And Since then, I've started working for him as the comm director. Neil Dykeman, the Libertarian candidate for Senate, he's had a few interviews on TV in spite of all of the trouble we've been having getting speaking spots. And he's doing really good out in West Texas, surprisingly, where the competition's from. The Texas Tribune has basically called him a wild card this election, saying that his numbers could sway the election one way or the other. As a sixth-generation Texan, he's in touch with Texans. As a serial entrepreneur and venture capitalist, building his first company in his 20s and since then has created not one but 7 other successful businesses, he has shown he knows what it takes to create jobs where it counts, in the private sector, not false government jobs that go away the next election. And he's running for his 2 daughters. So as a father and a family man, he knows how important it is to look at the future. So ladies and gentlemen, U.S. Senate candidate Neil Dykeman.
There was every single one of my talking points, so I guess I'm going to have to come up with a new stump speech on the fly here. The first Hays County event I came to, I think there were 8 people there, so this is terrific to see. And part of the reason it's terrific to see is because this is actually one of our best counties. Yeah, there are 2 areas in Texas, the Austin Quad and far west Texas, that punch outside their weight in Libertarian votes to the tune of about 2-to-1 from the rest of the state. This is our home country. Right? This is, and I guess y'all guys being from here, you understand that. I didn't. I had to look at data and figure it out. But there's a reason for it. These areas think more independent than a lot of Texas, and they vote independent. You pull the trigger for candidates based on who you think they are and how you think they would lead, not just on the labels. That's the way Texas has been, was 100 years ago, should be, and will be again. As I said, my name is Neil Dykeman, and I am running for United States Senate. And I am running because I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. It's Clara and Gwen. And I kind of got tired of the can being kicked down the road to them by our elected officials. Right? By the time my 5-year-old gets to high school, the latest tax cut and spending combo will add $12 trillion, another $100,000 per American family in human terms, to the federal debt. These are issues, whether it's immigration or debt or health care, that our elected officials have been talking about the same tired solutions since before I was able to vote. My college professors had written the book and delivered it to the U.S. Senate on how to fix Medicare and Social Security before I was in college. And they were teaching it to me when I was in college. And today, they're still writing on the same problems and the same fixes 2 decades later. Our guys, 535 of them have had their heads in the sand. And that's why I'm running here. Number one, my daughters. We can't kick this can down the road anymore, and somebody has to stand up. Life and politics are participatory sports. These are not spectator sports. But the second is almost as important. On my ballot in 2016, there were half a dozen races, and only one choice. One. In 2016. In 2018, if you go take the Texas Tribune and go look at all the races they've got laid out there, they've got all the little color codes, each of our names beside each one. There are about 200 and change races in federal and state this year in Texas. 50 of them only have one candidate. Another 13, that's 1 out of 4. Well, it would be 1 out of 3 without the Libertarian Party. Guys, there should never be a race with only one choice. Worse, most of those guys ran unopposed in their primaries. We need to start making these guys more afraid of the general election, more afraid of you guys in the middle than they are of their echo chambers in their own primaries. And only then, when you take their vote and make them come back and beg for it, only then are they going to run better candidates in the primaries. Only then are they going to take up the issues that matter to all of us. Only then are they going to reach across the aisle and step through the polarization. That's what we're doing this year. You know, liberty in our lifetime is not my thing. I'm a startup guy. 2 years, 36 months, I get them launched. I don't wait my lifetime for anything. And I'm not intending to wait my lifetime to have an impact in the Libertarian Party. So we started this race trying to figure out, what are we going to do to have an impact? Well, in 5 years, they're not going to remember my name. You're not going to remember my name. But I do hope you remember the impact. This year so far, we got the Texas Tribune to state on record, this is Texas's best and biggest independent media source when it comes to politics, that the Libertarian candidate was going to affect the race. Never in the history of the Libertarian Party in Texas has a media source ever claimed a Libertarian candidate is going to affect the statewide race. Ever. That's what put us on Capitol tonight, on Thursday night before the debate, to talk about the exact same thing. How are we impacting this race? And then in that debate stage, the sitting Republican senator for Texas, the runner-up for the presidential nomination, called himself a libertarian because I have him rattled. Because he actually thinks all of our votes are fallen Republican votes. They're not. He doesn't understand why you vote Libertarian. He doesn't understand why I run Libertarian. He doesn't understand that our values cut across Texas. But we're going to have an impact this year. And I think this year, for the first time, we're going to see a major race where our vote count is bigger than the margin of victory. Doesn't matter which way it goes. Once that happens, they're going to remember. And once they remember, we can change the entire course of American politics. But that's not where it stops. I'd like to talk to you about my theory of one. Right? So everything good that has happened in my campaign has been one person, and usually not me. We are running a college tour at about 15, 20 colleges this year. We were at University of St. Thomas, Lone Star, and Texas Wesleyan last week. Monday, we're at UTSA talking to an NAACP group. Then we're at South Texas. I've got other candidates coming with me. Mark Tippett is coming with me. Mike Wright. Yeah, all these other guys are coming with me. We are going on this tour. That's one guy. That's one of my volunteers who called up and said, "What can I do to help?" I said, "Hell if I know. I've never run a campaign before. But I need to talk to college students. Can you get me some?" He's like, "Sure, how do I do that?" I said, "I'll send you a list of colleges, see what you can do." And the names just started stacking up. It's cold calling. He's doing the hard work, just him, one guy. The campaign comics, how many of y'all have actually seen my campaign comics online? Right? That's one person. That's my treasurer, who shows up one day to a meeting to talk about filling out my financial forms and shows me a comic that she's made. Says, "What do you think?" And I said, "It looks great. Let's run it." And I stuck it on Facebook and it blew out. That's one person. All of that, one person, not me. It's all volunteers and it's one person. Every single time. And if you look at a startup, if you look at the huge tech hubs around the world, they're not actually the story of government intervention. They're not actually the story of this monolith or this thing out there. They're the story of one, maybe two, maybe three founders in one company with one idea at one time who pushed it until it won. And guys, most of them lose, but it only takes one. And if you look at the Libertarian Party and then go back in history to our American Revolution and realize we did not win the Revolutionary War by sitting behind trees and sniping with a militia. That's not how it happened. It happened at Saratoga and at Monmouth and Cowpens, Guilford Courthouse, and finally Yorktown, when the Continental Army learned to take and hold ground against the very best in the world at that time. On one field, on that day, in that hour, you can take and hold your own ground. And that's what the Libertarian Party in Texas, after we impact this race this year, needs to learn to do. And that's what we're working on. We're going to learn to take races. We're going to have to learn to go where our country is, places like Hays County, that vote Libertarian more than any other place in the state. But aren't currently running a slate of candidates. And we need to take and hold ground here. This isn't a money thing. This isn't about how much money a candidate can raise. And once we can take and hold ground in our races here with our voters on our issues, they're going to come try and take them back. And then we're going to hold it. Because it is about people and that one person and the issues and the actual hard work of building those relationships. And all we have to do is take one race. Because in a polarized world like we are today, the voters in the middle have all the power. And when you put one guy in that county courthouse, one woman in that state house, one person in the U.S. Senate, in a polarized world, that's the person with all the swing, with all the lever, with all the power. That's how we're going to change the world. Somebody told me when I started this that the Prohibition Party did not actually have to win a lot of elections in order to change the Constitution. And that's the way we need to think about it. We only have to do this once, but we have to do it once. And we're going to have an impact, and we're not going to wait 50 years to do it. Right? We are building off 50 years of history. Now it's time to take and hold ground and start changing the world, the way the world works, so that by the time my 5-year-old gets to high school, and by the time Mike Wright's little grandchildren, who are the same age in the same church, get to high school, their world is a different and a better place. That's why we're doing this. Thank you very much. I'm Neil Dyson, running with the United States Senate.
Thank you, Neil. And Neil, 5 years from now, I will remember you. I'm bad with names. I might not remember your name, but I will remember you. I'm Michael Hansen. I was introduced earlier. I'm the Vice Chair of Hays County. And I want to thank everybody that came out tonight. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the candidates for what they've done. There's a couple of things I'd like to speak to you all about just in brief. And then we're going to open up the floor to some of the other candidates that have not had a chance to speak. I want to talk to you about your voice. All of us have a right to free speech. We have a right to our vote. I want you to carry this message with you to others that talk about this election coming up. We commonly hear of selecting the lesser of two evils. This isn't the truth, though. We have a right to our voice, and your vote is your voice. You don't have to choose the lesser of two evils. Next time somebody talks to you about this, convey that to them. Make sure they understand that the more voices that are raised, the more votes that are in opposition to the two-party system, the more likely other people are going to hear that voice. The other thing I want to talk to you about a little bit about is campaigns. Each of these people that have spoken tonight, there's a few others that are going to come up here and speak again, they don't run their campaigns on hopes and dreams. They do, but they run it on money. Contemplate donations to these people. Make sure that you consider that as your evening goes on, as the days go by. Go out, find their web pages, make some donations to them. It doesn't matter if it's $20 or if it's $500. Reach out, give them some money. These signs that you see over here, these hats, these shirts, bumper stickers, they have to be paid for. They need this cash in order to be able to advance their campaign and represent you so that they can be part of that voice that you raise. So with that, I would like to introduce the other candidates that have not spoken. Would you like to start, Mr. Wright?
First off, I want to thank everybody from Hays County for putting this event on. It's a good turnout, and it's glad to be here. I'm Mike Wright, and I'm running for Railroad Commission. I have taken a very different approach to this election. First off, I've thought about being a Libertarian all my life. I vote for the best candidate. I never vote straight party or anything else. Neil Dykeman, who I was his first employer, asked me to run. And 10 months ago, I agreed to run. And Neil and the Libertarian Party looked at my resume and looked at all the offices that hadn't been filled and decided I would be the best candidate for Railroad Commissioner. So I've been studying what the Railroad Commission does. And by the way, it has nothing to do with railroads. And one of the things I found is the Railroad Commission meets once a month, roughly. They have a 400-item agenda, and they start promptly at 9:30, and they finish between 11:25 and 11:35. Now, that is not much oversight, folks. On top of that, they vote 3-0 on 99% plus of the items, and 2-1 on the other 1%. I'm retired, and I've got the time to spend working full-time if necessary to make sure there's oversight. The next big issue is water. Fracking is involved in 95% of the drilled wells nowadays. And it's growing, but typically a well takes between 1 and 2 million gallons of water. Some wells take over 25 million gallons. They can recycle a lot of that water, and in production they generate a lot more water, which also can be saved. And I would be in favor of putting together a system, a cooperative from the oil companies to recycle that water so they can reuse it, separate the sand, reuse it, and give them a credit against their severance tax, which is about $5 million a year, to pay for that. It will save them money, it'll improve the environment, and it'll bring about a lot of water for West Texas, which critically needs it. I am not asking for your money, I'll take it. But what I want you to do, at the conclusion, come back and give me your name and email. I will send you information about my candidacy, my response to the League of Women Voters, Dallas Morning News, etc. I would like for you to share that with everybody on your email list if you support what I believe in. And ask them to do the same. If you do the math, I have over 400 people on my email list. If everybody else has a similar number, in 2 iterations, we will cover 64 million people. That'll be everybody in the state of Texas 2 times over. Now, that's the way there's a lot of numbers involved and so forth. I'll be glad to talk to you about that. But I've identified a problem and I've got a solution. It'll save the oil companies money, it'll protect the environment, and it'll provide more water for West Texas. It's a winner all the way around. I'm not as big an ideology as a lot of people. I look for problems and I look for solutions. And I look for solutions that everybody can support. And that's what I'll do with the other issues that come out before the Railroad Commission. I'm a one and done candidate, folks. I'm 71 years old. It's a 6-year term. I'll be 78. I'm not planning like Rick Perry to run for another office. Any money I have left at the end of my campaign, I'll donate to charity. I mean, I'm truly here to serve the people of Texas. Thanks for your time and support.
Everyone, I'd like to introduce Anthony Cristo. Leave it on, leave it on.
Hi, I'm Anthony Cristo, and I am running for Congress in District 15, which doesn't include Hays County, but just a little bit east in northern Guadalupe County, and runs all the way south to the border. 250 plus miles. So Mark, when you become governor, I want you to make sure you stop this gerrymandering district. Yeah. Because it's killing me on gas. But it's worth it. This past Thursday, I was at Freer High School, which has a whopping 212 students, but they welcomed a Libertarian there to speak. And they recognized that the Republicans weren't there, the Democrats weren't there, but a Libertarian was there, and he was willing to listen to what they have to say. Now, Duval County only has maybe about 5,000 people. And overall, out of the 698,588 people that make up the voting district, that's a very small amount. So of course the other two aren't going to listen to him. I did, and they recognized it. They appreciated it. They went home and said they're going to tell their parents about it. The things that I support, and the things that, because the first thing I asked them was, who's your congressman? They didn't know. A lot of the teachers didn't know. The staff didn't know. And that's common with most people. But I said, if you vote for me this November, you will know who your congressman is, and I will come back and listen to you. They appreciate that. And I'm going to be doing this in Falfurrias, which is Brooks County. And all these small counties, even if I don't win the big ones, if I win those, it's going to bring attention to the Libertarian Party and let them know we're a force to be reckoned with. We're not just some fringe organization. We are very serious. The reason why I'm running is I'm a veteran, and I have post-traumatic stress disorder. And the reason for that is I was a corpsman with 4th Light Armored Recon Marines. And part of my duty when I was stationed at Bethesda was to be on suicide watch with a lot of these men that came back in pieces, both physically and emotionally. They had lost limbs, they had burns over 50% of their body, and they were wondering how their life's going to be. A lot of them use marijuana to deal with the post-traumatic stress disorder that they have. They use marijuana to deal with pain management because it's safer than the opioids, and they recognize that. And they also use it to deal with seizures because they have traumatic brain injuries. And I feel after sitting with those men, I owe it to them to allow them on a federal level to give them the medicine that they feel works for them. Because even in states like Colorado, Washington, California, where it's legal, on a federal level, if they get tested at work for drugs, they will get fired. And we don't want to have veterans unemployed, especially after they served our country. If you notice, my shirt says RGV with the marijuana. It's because most of my district is in the Rio Grande Valley. One thing I've learned also, and Neil basically broached the subject too, is the border issue and deportation. This also brings in veterans as well, because since Obama's administration, there have been several thousand veterans honorably discharged that were deported to 30 different countries, not just to Mexico. And usually it was for minor infractions, like in California, if you have a gun in your car, you get arrested. Even though it's a Second Amendment right, you get arrested in California. You serve a few days in jail, and if they find out you're not a citizen, you get deported. Now, I don't know about you, but I think if you've earned the right to be buried at Fort Sam Houston, at Arlington National Cemetery, if you've earned the right to be buried on U.S. soil, you damn sure should have the right to be living on U.S. soil. Not to mention, in the Rio Grande Valley, after speaking to some of these people, many of them are citizens, and they tell me of how their friends, their relatives are getting deported, and they are citizens. Because under ICE, you're automatically assumed guilty until proven innocent. They say that, well, you're not a citizen, so you don't get the same rights as an American who's innocent until proven guilty. Sometimes they're able to prove their citizenship while they're in detention, but they shouldn't be detained that long. Sometimes for several weeks, sometimes for several months. Some of them get deported, and then once they're deported, then they have to start proving through the American consulate that they are citizens and come back. I thought this was a myth, but the people down there are telling me this does happen. Not as often as you would think, but it does happen. And that's something that we do need to rectify with our immigration reform. Aside from that, I do think the Libertarian Party is getting a lot stronger. We've seen 150% growth since 2012, and we're only going to keep getting bigger because we're starting to be taken seriously because it's getting harder and harder to take the Republicans and Democrats seriously anymore. I'm Anthony Cristo. You have a good evening.
I believe we have one more candidate. I'd like her to come up and introduce herself. Is Lee you prefer?
Yes, sir.
Or Leanne. Anne's my middle name. My father-in-law calls me Liana La Tejana. You can call me that if you want. I also answer to Lisa, Linda, Luann, and Lori, in case you forget like everyone else, so that's okay. Well, I am the Libertarian candidate for District 21 for Congress, which this is part of my district, and which extends clear to Fredericksburg and Leakey and Bandera, and it's a huge district. And I live here in New Braunfels, about 15 minutes down the road, down Hunter, so this is my turf, sort of. And I'm big on Twitter. If anybody likes Twitter, I'm at Hardcore Libertarian, at TX Hobbs Farmer. I also have a YouTube channel, Hardcore Libertarian, at Lee Santos. I'm a big marijuana legalization advocate from Colorado. Lived here 5 years, and I'm bringing it here to Texas. I came here as a medical marijuana patient and had no access to my medicine for the last 5 years. So I'm really motivated to get this legalized and stop putting people in jail for a plant. It's not fair. And also I'm fighting a big fight on Twitter right now for candidates who are not being allowed to debate and are being left off of polls, and it's not fair, and I am doing everything I can to make sure people know about us and in a lot of pretty crazy ways. So please vote for me, and my website is www.hardcorelibertarian.com, and I would love to hear from you anytime. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, we have one more candidate that would like to speak. Please, come on up. What is your name, sir?
Clark Patterson.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Patterson. Here you go.
Yes, I'm Clark Patterson. I'm running for Congress here in District 35. Lloyd Doggett is the incumbent, of course. In the last couple of elections, Lloyd has won with over 60% of the vote, and likely will again this time too. I think it's really sad that here we are in 2018 with our political system goes back over 240 years, and yet only 100 congressional seats are quote-unquote competitive, and this isn't one of them. I mean, Lloyd knows that, and he will win, you know, in a landslide. But we have to keep fighting the good fight. I first joined the Libertarian Party in late 1980, so that's 38 years, and unfortunately, it's very depressing. Now, I've not been active all those 38 years, honestly, but I've been keeping up with politics really for, well, probably over 40 years now, and things are not really good right now, are they? They're not good at all, and they don't look like they're going to get better anytime real soon. But I would just say, from what I've learned in 38 years, is this is a marathon we're in. This is a long, long slog. Unfortunately, I think the vast majority of the American people are really not with us. And so, you know, I guess back in 1980 when I joined, I was 21 years old, and I thought, you know, the libertarian moment was at hand. Ed Clark had just won like 5% of the vote in California 2 years earlier, and he was running with David Koch, Charles Koch, I believe, or David Koch, I believe, in 1980, and it just looked like the libertarian movement was just about to turn the corner, but that didn't happen. And so I guess my advice to everybody here, those of you who have not been involved that long, is, you know, it really is this is a long-term thing. I mean, we've got real big problems, obviously. In 1980, the federal debt was $1 trillion. $1 trillion. And then after Reagan left office 8 years later, it was $2 trillion. And believe me, we couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was just shocked that a conservative Republican would double the national debt. Well, now we know it's $21 trillion, over $21 trillion, and growing. And then, of course, we have unfunded liabilities of over $210 trillion. That's over 10 times the size of the U.S. GDP. I mean, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Everybody should, in fact, vote Libertarian this year and for many, 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 many elections in the future, just so we can get some control of the size and growth of the federal government. But, you know, we hope that happens. I see Neil Dyckman out there. And yes, I don't have children like Neil does. He has 2 young girls. And I mean, it's just incredible that we're mortgaging the future of our children for what we're doing. We're living like, you know, like we have, there's no tomorrow. We're spending, our country's spending like, you know, we're a bunch of drunken sailors. And that really is an insult to sailors. That's a real insult to sailors. But the fact is, you know, we're in big trouble. And we need some, you know, we obviously, libertarianism is, I believe it in my heart and soul, The libertarian answer is the complete and total and only correct answer for what ails America. I mean, that's the only way, only libertarian ideas will make America great again. Only libertarian ideas, and as we know, the man in the White House, he's definitely not a libertarian. He doesn't wake up each morning thinking, gee, what can I do to reduce the size and scope of the federal government? He simply doesn't do that, and unfortunately, again, I think I may have the minority opinion tonight, but I think the American people today, yeah, and again, after keeping up with politics for most of my life, I think I started when I was 14 years old in 1973. The American people want something for nothing. That's terribly unfortunate. They're just not with us yet. But we have to keep fighting the good fight. That's all we can do. I probably, when I was 21, I really thought I would see a libertarian society, and sometime in my lifetime. I'm 59 now. I've kind of given up hope on that, but I'm definitely going to keep fighting the good fight, because again, the libertarian answer is the only answer for what ails America. It's the only thing that would really it's really going to make America great again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any other candidates out there that would like to take a minute to speak and introduce themselves? Everyone, the Hays County Party would like to thank you for coming out. We would like to thank all the candidates for everything they've done. Again, I'd like to encourage you to go to their website to make... Oh, would all the Hays County people please come up here? Yes, we're all thanking you for everything that you guys have done, and we're proud to be a part of the Hays County to be able to accomplish a lot of these things together. So,
Everybody, we have the venue till another 45 minutes, an hour, so please mingle, enjoy yourself, talk to the candidates, and drink some more beer. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you all for coming out tonight. All right? Thank you.
all candidates, please come to the front.
Mike.
Mr. Dykeman, could you please come up here?
Yeah.
Are there any guest speakers that can come up here? Where is Mr. Harden?
Over there.
Come on, Mr. Harden.
Barry, you need to
Are
get
we
in
in
there.
tight enough? Do we need to get tighter?
Dr. Ruard, you gotta get in there. Right here. There you go.
Don't look so happy.
Thank you guys. Thank you everyone.
Thank you again.